Welcome back, capital F football fans, to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. Today, we are looking at some of the biggest head coaching hires of the 2025 offseason and going over their potential impact on their new squads, their success as a coach previously, and giving out our grades for each new hire. As always, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy. And without further ado, let's jump into it, starting with Charles Huff of Southern Miss. What a ride for Coach Huff this year. Wins the Sun Belt in his third year in the conference at Marshall. Give them their best season since 2015, but after the season, him and Marshall can't reach an agreement on a contract extension, and that leads to him moving to in-conference rival Southern Miss, who is 11-26 since joining the Sun Belt in 2022, and who went 14-30 in former head coach Will Hall's tenure there. And safe to say, Huff's got a lot of work to do there before Southern Miss is at the top of the Sun Belt, but it does help that Huff brings in a ton of portal prospects, mostly from Marshall, to help bridge the gap between total rebuild and instant success, so they could be on top sooner rather than later. But now let's take a look at his report card. Now, the way these will work is we're going to look at a number of key coaching factors and come down to a single rating for each coach. Based on that rating, as well as a couple other factors, we'll give each hire a grade. Starting off with Coach Huff, let's look at his experience so far. Hasn't been a head coach at the FBS level for very long. Started with the Thundering Herd in 2021, so we're going to rate him a 7 out of 10 in that respect. And next, let's look at recruiting. Naturally, it's going to be a bit harder to recruit at the group of 5 level, so we will be giving some grace to the G5 guys in this video. Huff hasn't been stellar. He's averaged the 7th ranked recruiting class out of 14 Sunbelt teams since 2022, been moderately better out of the portal in that stretch, so we're going to give him a 7.5 out of 10 in that aspect. As for development, hasn't seen a lot of guys go to the NFL in his time as a head coach, but that's also naturally going to be harder to do at the group of 5 level, and in 4 seasons, he was able to develop Marshall into a conference champion. Not bad at all, and for that, we'll rate him at a 7.5 out of 10 for development as well. And last, let's look at fit. This is going to be less straightforward than the others. This is how well we think each coach fits into their new schools based on region familiarity, conference familiarity, prior experience at the school, and so on. And for Huff, we think he hits the nail on the head in this category. He's at another Sun Belt team, won't have problems convincing guys to play for him, seeing as he just won the conference title with a different squad. So we're going to give him a 10 out of 10 in this category. Doesn't get much better than that, and that rounds him out to a coach rating of 8 out of 10, which brings us to our final grade for this hire, and we have to give it an A+. Doesn't get a whole lot better at that level. A proven winner. It's only going to get easier to get guys to come play for him if he keeps winning at Southern Miss. Love this hire for the Golden Eagles. And now let's take a look at Dan Mullen heading to UNLV, a man who needs no introduction, one of the best known coaches in the sport, 2014 SEC Coach of the Year, and after a few years away from the sport, Coach Mullen returns, and he's going to Vegas. Interesting pairing for sure. UNLV's already got a pretty solid foundation for Mullen. Former coach Barry Odom went 20-8 in 2 seasons with the Rebels and finished top 25 in the AP in 2024. A lot to work with already for Mullen, but let's get to these grades. Experience-wise, it's got to be a 9.5 out of 10. He's been a coach for 13 seasons. Started in 2009 at Mississippi State, coached 2 different SEC teams. Doesn't get much better than that in terms of quality head coaching experience. And for recruiting, going to be equally as high at a 9 out of 10. He's achieved a number of elite recruiting classes in his time at both Mississippi State and Florida. He's been at the top of the sport in that aspect, so he's going to have to grade out high in that regard. And next, for development, honestly, going to have to be in the same realm as recruiting. We're giving him a 9 out of 10 for this as well. Hasn't developed an overabundance of guys to the NFL, but has done well in that regard, especially at Mississippi State. Only had 2 losing seasons in 9 years there. Got them to a consistent 8, 9, 10 win program in those years. And as for fit, however, not the greatest in our eyes. He's got no real experience on the West Coast except for 2 years as a quarterback coach at Utah in 2003 and 2004. And for that, we're going to give him a 7 out of 10 in that regard. And summed up, that gives Dan Mullen a coach rating of 8.6 out of 10. Fairly high. Absolutely nothing to sneeze at there. And for the final grade for this hire, we're going to have to shell out yet another A+. Once again, doesn't really get better than that as a Mountain West program. We fully expect them to compete at the top of that conference this year. Stellar coach, stellar hire. And next, let's take a look at Barry Odom of Purdue. We talked about him a second ago, did great things at UNLV the past 2 seasons, and has made the jump back to the Power 4 level at Purdue after fizzling out more or less at Missouri from 2016 to 2019. Regardless, he's now in the Big Ten after winning Mountain West Coach of the Year in 2023, and after bringing UNLV its first double-digit win season since 1984. Let's start looking at these grades for Coach Odom. Experience-wise, he's been an FBS head coach for 6 seasons, Missouri for 4 years, and UNLV for 2. Could be a lot better, but he's done relatively decent in that time frame, especially for having coached in the SEC. And for that, we're going to rate him at a 7.5 out of 10. Not great, not bad, but pretty decent. And next, for recruiting, honestly has not been his forte in his career. Ranked in the bottom 2 of the SEC in every year at Missouri. Did moderately better at UNLV, but still not fantastic. And in his first Big Ten offseason, ranks last in that conference as well. And for that, he's grading out at a 6.5 out of 10. But as for development, he's been able to achieve a decent amount of success despite those low numbers. His teams tend to outperform their recruiting numbers every year, so for that, we feel comfortable grading him at a 9 out of 10. Might seem a little bit high, but going 25-25 in the SEC at Missouri and 20-8 at UNLV despite those awful recruiting numbers, that's very impressive in our opinion. And last, for fit, we think it's a pretty solid fit for both parties. Makes sense in our eyes that a defense-centric coach like Odom goes to a Big Ten school, especially a school like Purdue, and he's also got ties to the Midwest already. So for that, we've given this fit rating an 8.5 out of 10. Solid fit down in West Lafayette, and for the final coach rating, we're giving him a 7.9 out of 10. Pretty solid, but still has room to grow. And as for the grade for this hire, we like it, and it has potential to work out like a Jeff Brom tenure at Purdue, but it is quite the jump. We'll just say that. For now, we're giving it a B. And we're going to wait to see what Purdue looks like in year 1 before we start to talk about potential for this Purdue team and this Purdue roster under Coach Odom. But next, we're going to jump to the Big 12 to look at Rich Rodriguez returning to West Virginia, the man who graced this world with Pat McAfee, the return of the prodigal son to Morgantown. Rich Rod has been around the block and back over his 18-year head coaching career at West Virginia, Michigan, Arizona, and Jacksonville State. Went 16-26 with the Ears from 2001 to 2007 with a couple Big East titles thrown in there, and for that, his experience has to be a 10 out of 10. One of the most tenured head coaches in the sport. Like we said, been everywhere and back, but what we can't say in that stretch is that he's been an excellent recruiter, been relatively mid everywhere he's been in his career apart from a couple good classes at Michigan. And with that being said, he's grading out at a 7 out of 10. And as for development, it's not going to be too high either, honestly. Not a ton of notable NFL draftees, and apart from his best seasons at West Virginia, really hasn't been able to develop a team to that high of a level. And in his 18 years as a head coach, he's only finished top 25 in the AP poll 5 times and has most recently finished in the top 25 all the way back in 2014. And for that, we're giving him a modest 7.5 out of 10. But in terms of fit, what else could we really give him here other than a 10? One of the best coaches in school history returns. Reminds me a bit of Mac Brown coming back to North Carolina a few short seasons ago. Should be an interesting acquisition to say the least. And overall, that has him grading out at an 8.6 out of 10. We're giving this hire a B+. This hire should be great for a West Virginia culture that has been waning over the years with Neil Brown. Should be at least able to return them to a respectable team in the Big 12. We like the hire, but next, let's let's stay in the Big 12, jumping to UCF to look at Scott Frost, who has now been labeled as the prodigal son twice in his head coaching career, first at Nebraska, now back at UCF after Gus Malzahn leaves. And his experience in college football is only 7 seasons, but he's jammed a lot of lore into those years, won AP National Coach of the Year in 2017, and has won numerous awards for the best 3-9 team in football history in 2021 at Nebraska. And for that, we're grading him at a 7.5 out of 10 in terms of experience. And as for recruiting, despite all the woes he experienced at Nebraska, he was always a good recruiter, finishing with multiple top 5 Big Ten recruiting classes. We absolutely count that as a win, and we're going to be giving him an 8 out of 10 in that category. Been very good at recruiting in his career, but we cannot say the same for development. He was actually known for the exact opposite in his time at Nebraska. Good recruiting with absolutely no development. Didn't see a ton of players get drafted, and more importantly, didn't see a lot of wins coming out of his recruiting classes. For that, we will rank him at a 6.5 out of 10. Not very good at all. But as for fit, we think it makes a lot of sense. He's obviously been at UCF before, experienced success there, won some bowl games, so we like the higher in terms of fit. But seeing as how his career has gone so far, would have much rather seen this further down the line after some coordinator or group of 5 head coaching success. So we're giving it a 9 out of 10. Still a very good fit for his style of play in the Big 12, but still a lot to work out there. And that brings us to our coach rating. Overall, he's going to grade out to a 7.8 out of 10. And we're giving this hire a C. Like we said, it's a good hire for the culture, but UCF wasn't a bad team under Malzahn. Could have probably made a safer hire by poaching a top group of 5 coach, but chose to go with the nostalgia. Don't blame them at all. Could go really well for them, but obviously could also go very, very poorly for them. And last for our video, it's the biggest shocker of this offseason so far. We have Bill Belichick of North Carolina, the 6-time Super Bowl champion, the defensive guru, 3-time AP NFL Coach of the Year, makes his way to Chapel Hill, and this is very, very tricky to read. He's obviously a great coach, but has 0 experience at the college football level, which may sound kind of funny to hear, but there are huge differences between coaching in the NFL and coaching in college. So with that, let's look at experience. Hard to really give him anything but a 10 out of 10 here. Again, hasn't coached at the college level, but has been coaching since 1975. Obviously one of the NFL's greatest coaches ever, so can't complain much there. But as for recruiting, he's made a couple of splashes so far, but really hasn't had an amazing class all around in his first offseason. He's 9th in the ACC in high school recruiting and 3rd in the portal. Not too bad, but then again, we can't afford him the benefit of the doubt here because of his lack of college recruiting experience. So for this grade, we gave him a 7.5 out of 10. And as for development, I mean, the guy developed Tom Brady. Don't really know what else to say there. He's developed NFL Hall of Famers, but once again, hard to know exactly how well that will translate to college, where you're dealing with a lot more raw talent. For now, he'll grade at a 9 out of 10, but we'll really need to wait and see there. And last for fit, we can't say the move makes a ton of sense, honestly. His dad, Steve Belichick, was a coach at UNC in the 1950s, an assistant coach at that, but other than that, no real ties to the program in its current state. Don't know what to make of it since we're not sure what his scheme will look like at North Carolina, so we're going to grade this at a modest 7.5 out of 10 just for good measure, which rounds Coach Belichick out to an 8.5 out of 10, and we're going to give this hire an A-. We think it'll go relatively well, not sure how well. It'd be hard for me to imagine this hire turning out as a complete flop, at the very least hovering around where North Carolina has been in the past few seasons under Mac Brown, but we think it'll pay off in some respects. Very hard to pinpoint, obviously, but we're gonna give him some grace here. And with that, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe. If you really enjoyed it, feel free to share it with some of your friends, your aunt, your uncle, whoever it may be. It is much appreciated, and we will see you in the next one.